prediction, crash, and also possibly a shutdown of the stock market on March 13th, 2026. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. This email, or also this video, is documenting the prediction that the US stock market will crash on Friday, March 13th, 2026. Specifically this date. It'll be a black swan financial event, which is an unexpected, shocking event. It is predicted that also this will be the initial shocking event, the initial shock to what will become the biggest stock market crash in history. It is also predicted, or also I should say speculated, it's not necessary for this prediction, but it's also speculated that on March 13th, trading will be temporarily halted. The loss in the S&P 500 stock index on March 13th is speculated to be large enough to trigger a circuit breaker that temporarily shuts down trading. Trading is halted when the S&P 500 index loses 7%, 13%, and 20% in one trading day. In other words, the S&P 500 index is speculated to lose on this March 13th date 7% or possibly 13% or 20%. And again, the post date of this video and this email and forensic notes PDF document is documenting that this prediction is being made ahead of time. This knowledge of this prediction for March 13th, 2026 has been known since early or late February. Late February. Well, the date here is March 7th in this email, but this was known a week or two even before this. All right, welcome. I'm very excited to explain this diagram to you that confirms this prediction for March 13th, 2026. The prediction is that the stock market will crash on this date. It will be a black swan event, a sudden, unexpected financial event, such as, for example, the Black Monday in 1987, considered to be a black swan financial event. That's what's predicted to occur on March 13th, 2026. It's also speculated that possibly the trading will be halted on this day after the loss is so large that it triggers a circuit breaker when it loses 7%, 13%, and 20% in one day. Trading is temporarily halted at 7 and 13%, and then if it reaches 20%, it is halted for the rest of the day. And so that's what's predicted for March 13th, and when this prediction comes to pass, it will prove all of the information in this diagram, which is truly profound. There's so many stories that God is telling that I can't wait to explain in this diagram. You will be blown away. And this diagram is not neat. It's like is typical with me. It was originally intended to simply be notes, a note for me to comprehend what God is doing. And it ended up becoming, like usual, so elaborate, but all related and connected, that there's really no point in me redoing the diagram again in order to draw straight lines, etc. I think everything is legible enough, and furthermore, I'll be explaining everything, and so I apologize the lines aren't straight and it's not a really neat looking diagram, but I can say with confidence that I will be able to explain it very clearly, and you'll be able to appreciate everything that is going on here, despite it looking at this surface level a little bit chaotic. It'll all make sense. I'll go through it step by step. It'll be quite clear and profound. And so the big, I guess you could say, center of the diagram is this date here, February 17th, 2026, which was also a date that was recognized ahead of time to be pointed to by God as being a date for the Black Swan event. It didn't end up being the Black Swan event. I'll just give you an example. This date was exactly 7 times 26 months after the release of the movie Black Swan, starring Natalie Portman. That's a whole other subject that I already made a video about prior to February 17th, when I was explaining how God was pointing ahead of time to February 17th. The videos that predicted a stock market crash on February 17th that are on this channel are 100% correct. And this will be proven to be true when this prediction comes to pass on March 13th. The reason for that is that I know far better than you the reason, or rather how, God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. February 17th was a step in the trail of signs, as you can see here. It's a diagram. It has steps along the way that are leading to the Black Swan event. So although God pointed to this Black Swan date ahead of time, we received the Black Swan event's signs on this day that confirmed all of the analysis and further provided more information as to how to proceed, which then leads us to March 13th. This is how it works. I could go back, but I don't think I'll have time. But I could go back and re-edit the videos. In other words, just put an introduction at the beginning of the videos for February 17th, explaining how February 17th, the signs on this date revealed adding 12 plus 12 days, etc., to get to March 13th. I could do that and then post them prior to March 13th in order to, if you will, save all of the amazing information in the February 17th videos. But it's not necessary. And the wise person will recognize that when this prediction comes to pass, that what I am saying is therefore true. And they will recognize that every minute of every video on this channel must be watched, including all of the videos for February 17th. If I don't have time to re-edit them and put an introduction at the beginning of the video that's explaining how God was pointing to February 17th for the Black Swan event. The same goes for February 25th. These are the two dates. And then we also, on this 25th date, we also received a Black Swan sign, which then again revealed more information and led us to March 13th. I'll explain. Let's see. This is explained in another video in more in detail. That's the case for everything in this diagram, by the way. This is all surface level. The details of these actual dates and the signs are actually explained further in other videos. That's very important to know. I'm just covering the surface level to just give you the diagram here. The details of this and this and this are all explained in other videos. Okay? But on this day, this was the day, just to give you the surface level, right? I'm not going to explain it enough for you to believe me, necessarily. When the prediction comes to pass, you'll have to believe me. But on this day, that was the big news story of the day, was the 4 deaths in the boat that was registered in the U.S. Off the coast of Cuba. The 4 killed by the Cuban Navy as they took control of the boat. It was a Pirates of the Caribbean sign. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, happened to be in the Caribbean on an island that day as also. It's part of the science. It's also part of what made it apparent, clear at the time that this was a Pirates of the Caribbean sign. Furthermore, the boat really was a pirate boat because it was, in reality, nationless. It wasn't an American official boat. It was simply a boat without really a nation, just like the boats of the pirates in the Caribbean. They were, in a way, British, but they weren't. This boat, in a way, was American, but it wasn't. It was Cuban Americans doing their thing with the regime, against the regime in Cuba, etc. It was a Pirates of the Caribbean sign. And as I explain in detail, all of it's more confirmed with connections, etc. But the first movie of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise is named Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. The plot of the Curse of the Black Pearl, the central theme of the central aspect of the plot, is the rescue of the actress or the character in the movie named Elizabeth Swann. So Black Pearl, Curse of the Black Pearl, is about the rescue of this lady Swan, which gives us a black swan. That's amazing. And this date was known ahead of time to be a black swan date. Okay, that's how amazing God's signs is. And so, like I'm saying, the videos that predict the Black Swan event on February 25th and February 17th are 100% correct. They are not quote unquote wrong. They are 100% correct. Do you understand? Am I clear? And all this will be proven when these predictions come to pass. And I have the authority to say that. I know more than you the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction. And it is to say to you that these other videos that predict the Black Swan event on February 25th and February 17th are 100% correct. And therefore, the amazing information in these videos must be watched. The same as all of the videos predicting March 13th. They are no less important. Okay, so again, this date was predicted in advance, this February 17th date. And then we had these signs that I'll just roughly outline here, which was the fourth deadliest avalanche in U.S. history with a skiing expedition led by 4 guides. Okay, and on this same day, there was and that, of course, an avalanche is a sudden, unexpected black swan event, right? That's symbolism for a black swan event. Furthermore, the snow falling from a peak is also symbolic of the stalks falling from sky-high peak, mountain peak levels, right? It's the biggest bubble in all of history, but like every bubble in history, no one recognizes that they're in a bubble until after the bubble is burst. But it definitely is the biggest stock market bubble of all of history. It is a massive bubble. It is a mania, but no one can recognize it. Everything is supposedly rational at the time of the bubble. The classic example of that is the tulip bubble, when people were actually inflating the prices of tulips. But at the time, it was all rational. But it's the great example because it's completely irrational. But just like in the 2008 crash, prior to it, we had the housing bubble. But prior to the housing bubble burst, everyone believed it was rational. People rationalized it, saying things like, there'll always be a need for real estate, you can't have enough real estate, etc., And the same with the tech bubble in 2000. The internet's going to change the world, etc. Yeah, the internet did change the world, but it didn't justify the stock valuation at the time, which was a bubble, which burst. Well, the same is true with this particular bubble. And the AI aspect of it is only the most recent tip of the bubble. The bubble that we are currently in goes all the way back to even before, really, 2008. When you look at the chart that goes back to that's another subject, okay? But the stock valuation was, even at the bottom of the crash in 2008, was still overvalued. But no one will understand that until a couple of years from now. Okay? And I'm not the great forward thinker that I seem to be presenting myself as, just because I'm thinking so uniquely here and independently. But no, this is stuff that I've been following with the people that do know the truth about the stock market for years now. It's called socionomics and Elliott wave principle, etc. All right, now, so we had the fourth deadliest avalanche, and it was led by the skiing expedition was led by 4 guides, which is important in the sign actually, because it is part of the story about the guides that were eaten by the Donner Party. Because on the day of the deaths, the 4+4 deaths that were led by 4 guides, and the guides that were eaten by the Donner Party were members of the 4 tribes. So it's funny, it's amazing. I mean, there are, in that area of northern central California, historically there were 4 tribes that were unique. They each spoke the same language, but 4 different dialects. They were actually sub-tribes of the same tribe. So they were all related, but there was actually 4, not 1 tribe. And here we have the 4 guides in the avalanche, but this hints at the Donner Party, in which they ate the guides. They killed them, they murdered the guides and ate them because they were so hungry. They were trapped at Donner Pass. These people were trapped in the snow. On the same day that they were trapped in the snow, Donner Pass, which was right near where they were trapped in the snow, was closed due to snow. The I-80 at Donner Pass, the Interstate 80, and interstates don't close, by the way. They're the vital trade artery between the states. They just don't close. But it was closed. I mean, it was snowing so much that the plows couldn't do it. Okay, that's pretty rare. The I-80 was closed right at Donner Pass on this very day. There were 8 deaths reported. All right. Okay, and it's the I-80. It all pointed to Donner Pass, which I explained in another video that I made prior to February 25th. Okay, you watched the Donner Pass party video, because it's a sign from God that's pointing to the coming cannibalism, or rather starvation, in America, and the coming restriction on buying and selling food to only those who take the mark of the Antichrist, the SHOT. Okay, so and the on the same day as the 4 guides and the 4th deadliest avalanche and the 4+4 deaths and the I-80, which is 40+40, we had another sudden unexpected black swan event on the same day. And there were 4 deaths in that. It was the brownout, when the soil from beside the interstate, and it was another interstate sign, the soil blew up into the air and caused what the sheriff or police chief called a brownout, when people lost visibility because of the dirt flying around, and there ended up being a car pileup in which 4 people died. And that was in Colorado. The avalanche, the 4th deadliest, and the 4 deaths in Colorado in the brownout, the black swan events, was exactly 444 plus 444 plus 444 days after the Colorado Avalanche hockey team won the Stanley Cup. Yep. All right, now, this 4 deaths and the 4 guides and 4th deadliest avalanche was 4 days after this black swan event. This wasn't recognized ahead of time. This was after, in hindsight, once this had happened, this was recognized as also being, well, prior to this actually, I think, but this was recognized as being a black swan sign because it was sudden and unexpected. What happened here was the heavily favored to win the gold U.S. men's figure skater crashed he collapsed. He totally choked. He had been dominating the figure skating world for years prior to the Olympics, and he was ahead by 5 points, which apparently is a lot, before the last skate of the competition, and he choked. He fell twice. He totally crashed. And it was a shocking thing in the figure skating world. It was a black swan. Not only that, he was dressed in all black and very effeminate. He definitely was a black swan. Furthermore, God's pointed to this date and this date with the movie Black Swan, which is about ballet. Natalie Portman is a ballerina, and that's like figure skating. It's like ballet. Okay, so it was a totally black swan. Not only that, but his nickname, the skater's nickname, was Quad God. He named himself that, though, which is quite egotistic and quite pagan to call himself Quad God. But quad is hinting at four, and he was the 4-time U.S. national champion. Like I said, he dominated figure skating 4 times. Okay, and this was 4 days before the 4 guides, the 4th deadliest avalanche, collapsed, just like he collapsed on the ice of snow, and the 4 deaths in Colorado, in the Black Swan brownout in Colorado. He finished in 8th place as a result. Okay, it was the I-80 that closed. It was 8 deaths. But also on the day of the Black Swan 4 deaths in the car pileup in Colorado was the death of the 80s coach of the basketball team from Colorado. It was also the day of the death of Jesse Jackson, the first serious black presidential candidate, and his candidacy was a Black Swan event in American politics. Okay, he finished in 8th place, and he was the 4-time U.S. champion. Jesse Jackson ran in 84. It was the I-80 and 4 guides, 4th deadliest avalanche. The 80s coach and 4 deaths in Colorado. You see a pattern here. Okay, so clearly there's this 8 and 4 pattern, right? That's why this 8 and 4 pattern confirms the 8 days and 4 days. 8 days to the next Black Swan event, which also was being pointed to at the movie Black Swan, incidentally, because this date was exactly 60 plus 60 plus 60 months after Natalie Portman won Best Actress for her role in Black Swan. Okay? Now, 8 days is also 4 plus 4 days, and it was the 4th deadliest avalanche, 4 guides, 4 deaths in Colorado. But it was also the 80s coach, the 80s candidate, the I-80, 8 deaths. All were for the purpose of adding 8 days. Also, it was this Black Swan figure skater crash, and we were ultimately talking about the Black Swan crash on Wall Street, who finished in 8th place after being a 4-time U.S. champion. So 8 days, 4 days. 84 Black Swan American politics event. Before we continue, the figure skater was ahead by 5 points, and so he actually only needed to skate conservatively to win, but it wasn't his style. He has an ego. He wanted to put on a performance, and then he crashed. But anyway, I don't blame him for that, really, but whatever. It happens, though, that this was 5 days after the Super Bowl, which was a rematch of the Black Swan Super Bowl, which was 11 years earlier. Okay, what do I mean by Black Swan Super Bowl? Well, this Super Bowl, Super Bowl 49, between the Patriots and the Seahawks, which was the case in this year's Super Bowl, but 11 years ago, the game came down to a Black Swan event. And literally, it was a sudden, unexpected, shocking thing at the very end of the game. I remember this quite vividly. I was in the biggest sports bar in Boston and was at the time a New England Patriots fan, and the place just erupted. We thought we had lost the Super Bowl, and then on the last play of the game, the shocking, sudden, unexpected black swan event occurred, and we won the game. What happened was the Seahawks should have scored a touchdown quite easily. All they had to do was give the ball to the player nicknamed the Beast, which is also prophetic because of the prophetic beast quake, and the beast quake because a metaphor for the Antichrist in the Bible is the beast. The beast quake is another story, which I'll explain in a second, but all they had to do was hand it off to the beast, whose number was 24, 8 plus 8 plus 8. But they didn't. They threw the ball instead, and it ended up being intercepted right at the end zone. I mean, they were starting from like the 2-yard line, and they just needed to run the ball into the end zone, and it would have been a game over. But they decided to throw the ball, and they had a few chances too. But they decided to throw the ball. I think the strategy, I forget, but it wasn't good. It was highly criticized to this day. Anyway, it ended up being intercepted by Malcolm Butler for the Patriots. Also prophetic. That's another story though. There's like all of the signs, especially like this thing, like a big Super Bowl like this, there's all kinds of tangents and directions. Like you could make a diagram going off in different directions and different themes. We want to stick with the theme of Black Swan though. So we'll just cut it off there and not get into how Butler points to Butler, Pennsylvania, where Trump was shot and stuff like that, right? Okay, so, which by the way, was a Black Swan event, but also when he does get assassinated, well, anyway, okay. So it was the Black Swan Super Bowl. And it was also the Seahawks, which is a bird. And the Black Swan bird strike that will cause the crash of a plane carrying the 49th vice president will be a Black Swan event in the 24th state, the 8 plus 8 plus 8th state, which is why the beast wears number 24 and why it was Super Bowl 49. That plane crash of Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, the predicted running mates in 2028, will lead the way to the return of Michelle and Barack Obama to the White House. Long story short, that's the big Black Swan event that's coming. Now, the Black Swan event of 9/11 was a Black Swan event. When the planes crashed into the towers, it was sudden and unexpected. Furthermore, the planes are like birds. But it was 11 years and then 9 days. From the Black Swan Super Bowl, it is 11 years to this year's rematch Super Bowl, and then 9 days. That's a 9 and 11. And that's the big warning of God's judgment. Furthermore, this gets us to the date 2/17, which is 9/11, because the two planes struck the two towers on 9/11 17 minutes apart. Two towers, 17 minutes apart. This date is 9/11. The reason for that, by the way, is because the flood in the Bible, a sudden, unexpected Black Swan event, began on the date 2/17. Also, the two space shuttle disasters, which were Black Swan events, were almost exactly 17 years apart. That's another 2/17. And they are commemorated on the same day every year because they are literally just a couple of days apart in the calendar year. And the reason why the two space shuttle disasters were 17 years apart and the two planes struck the two towers 17 minutes apart is because ultimately it points to Apollo 17. The last time that an American was on the moon is a giant rock. Rock in the Bible symbolizes Christ. America's departure from the moon last time symbolizes America's departure from Christ, which is what God was warning of on 9/11. With the two planes to 17 minutes apart in order to point to Apollo 17 through the space shuttle disasters, two of them 17 years apart. Okay, and again, it's a bird, and Apollo 17 was a bird, and this was the Seahawks that lost this game with the Black Swan interception. Interception in itself, by the way, well, I think I already said that. It's hinting at the intercepted bird strike of the plane of Kamala Harris over the 24th state. Okay, all right, I just said that. Now 24 is 12 plus 12. The nickname of the fans of the Seahawks is the 12s, because there are 11 players on a football team on the field, and so the fans are like the 12th player, if you will. These 12s, the 12s, in excitement after the prophetic play that the Beast made in 2011, it jumped up and down in excitement in the stands and caused an earthquake to be registered on the local seismograph. It's nicknamed the Eastquake. You can look it up on Wikipedia, the Beastquake. And Jesus said to look for earthquake signs as for signs of his return. And this is the beast because of the beast Antichrist. And it was against the saints and led by quarterback number 9, Drew Brees. The number 9 is the most important number in God's signs. It's from the Bible. It symbolizes God's judgment. And it's judgment on the saints, the church. Not what Catholics call saints, but saints, the true definition of saints in the Bible. Now, Barack Obama, the beast, Antichrist, his name is equal to 181 in Hebrew gematria. That's why the Beastquake was on the date 1/8 in 11. It hints at 181. But what's astounding is that this Beastquake was exactly 181 months, this diagram is incorrect, to the Super Bowl here, which was the rematch of the Black Swan Super Bowl, which should have been won had they handed the ball to the Beast. This 9 days is also, by the way, confirmed because the prophetic halftime show, 0 to 9. The score at the halftime was 0 to 9, and this Super Bowl is all about the halftime show. It's the prophetic significance of this Super Bowl. The major one is the halftime show. Okay, but what was the other 9? Obama was inaugurated in 09, and let's see. I was thinking of something. Well, anyway. So the Beastquake gets us to this Super Bowl, which is the rematch of the game that should have been won by the Beast. And the 181 months is astounding because it comes from the date 1/8/11, which identifies the Beast as Barack Obama, whose name is equal to 181. You see? It's amazing. Okay, so the halftime show. What was the halftime show? It was a controversy. Because of the controversy, there ended up being an alternative halftime show called put on by Turning Point. Turning Point hints at the turning point of the stock market, which is why Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point, died 9 times 17 days before the all-time peak in the Dow and its turning point, before it falls like an avalanche, which was February 10th. 9 times 17, well, the Beastquake play was when the player broke 9 tackles, which was why it was so exciting. He just broke 9 tackles, and the name of the play is nicknamed Power 17. So 9 and 17. Well, Barack Obama was president from 09 until 17, which is why God pairs in his signs 9 and 17 together to confirm the signs and connections. And by the way, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And if we think about it, one simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9 and 17. And I know that these are the numbers because I have been studying his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections from morning till night for more than full-time hours for more than 8 years. Because the building blocks of God's signs, this was recognized in the very years ago, are identifying the Antichrist. Of course. Okay, now not only is 9 times 17 days from the death of the founder of Turning Point to the turning point of the stock market relevant, but also 9 times 17 is 153, And this is one of the three unusually specific numbers in the New Testament, and it occurs in Jesus' last miracle when the disciples, the fishers of men, caught 153 fish, 200 cubits from shore, which hinted at the end of the age of fishing for men after 2,000 years. And Charlie Kirk was a fisher of men. He used politics on college campuses, in a sense, to promote the gospel. He was a fisher of men, speaking truth and also speaking the gospel at the same time. And so that's why the 153 days between the founder of the Turning Point to the turning point of the stock market. It's astounding, right? Now, what was I saying now? Okay, the 9 days is confirmed with the 0 to 9 score. And that's relevant because, 9 is the most important number from God's signs. It's from the Bible. It symbolizes God's judgment. And this is God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And Obama, arrived at the White House in 2009. I should say the White House, because the halftime show was about the White Rabbit. Bad Bunny, the big controversy, was the halftime show by this degenerate who put on a degenerate show named Bad Bunny. Okay, and which is a rabbit. But there's this theme of White Rabbit because on this day here was the solar eclipse in which the asteroid named White Rabbit was in conjunction with it. And that brings us to this. On this date, 12/12, because again, the 12's fans won the Super Bowl, this date, 12/12 in 2022, on this date, Elon Musk, a man God uses for prophetic signs from time to time, he's symbolized by X, SpaceX, his purchase of X for $44 billion because the 44th president and censorship. By the way, on the same day that he purchased X for $44 billion, the 44th president was delivering a speech in Stanford University about the need to censor speech in the university, which is the headquarters of the censorship industry. And Elon Musk bought the X platform because of censorship. And the left talks about conservatives destroying democracy. It's hilarious. Of course, that's the classic tactic of communists, is to accuse their enemy of what they're actually doing. Okay, and so he tweeted, or rather put on X, I guess at the time this would have been a tweet, "Follow the White Rabbit." That's what he tweeted. This was exactly, and it was the date 12/12, and it was exactly 12 plus 12 months before the date 12/12 in the year 12 plus 12, 24, which is again 8 plus 8 plus 8. Donald J. Trump is equal to 888 in English gematria. And on this day, 12/12 in the year 12 plus 12, Trump, God's trumpet, he uses to trumpet and highlight prophetic signs, was trumpeting at the New York Stock Exchange. This was when he was promoting how Time magazine had declared him to be the person of the year for the second time. This was a sign at the time that was recognized to be a sign pointing to the coming collapse of the stock market. Long story. Like I said, I'm only covering the surface level of the signs in this video because I could go off for another hour about that. And how 2 plus 2 plus 2 days later, which was prophetic for reasons because Washington was born on the date 222, and through 9/11, next to Wall Street, God pointed to George Washington. Anyway, on the day 2 plus 2 plus 2 days later, the Dow lost, and we were predicting this. We were predicting a stock market sign on that day. And sure enough, the Dow lost 1,123 points in that day. And that was the number one news story of the day because it's a significant amount. 1,123 is this big prophetic number that God repeats frequently. And so that's why we were floored. Our jaws were dropped when it happened because we were expecting such a thing. The reason why 1,123 is because it is the 188th prime number And God uses 188 frequently in his signs to point to H188 in the Hebrew concordance, which is the word that means woe, exclamation mark, used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. The only other time that a foreign enemy attacked the nation's capital was exactly 188 years before 9/11, on 9/11 in 1813, when the British landed at Washington's Mount Vernon estate and then proceeded to burn down the Capitol building and the White House, but not before Dolly Madison rescued the portrait of George Washington. And so, from the date 12/12, when Musk tweeted, "Follow the White Rabbit," we followed the White Rabbit 12 plus 12 months exactly to the date 12/12 in the year 12/12. And that date, when Trump was trumpeting the stock market, was exactly 12 times 12 plus 12 times 12 plus 12 times 12 days, and God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And this is a very relevant number in the book of Revelation and Bible prophecy regarding the end times, this 12 times 12 number. In fact, this 12 times 12 number, which is 144, is actually in that context, in that prophecy, broken down into 12 times 12. And so we have this repetition of 12 times 12 3 times to this February 17th date, which is again a 9/11 number. And 9/11 took place next to Wall Street, and Trump was on Wall Street this day. And it was a crash of snow from the peak, which is what's hinted at with Trump on Wall Street, trumpeting. And by the way, before the walls of security collapsed in the book of Joshua, the Israelites blew trumpets. That's why trumpet was blown on Wall Street, symbolizing America's walls of security collapsing in God's judgment. And the pillar of America's security is its military and finances, which is why Washington and the Pentagon, the symbol of the military, and the World Trade Centers were attacked. But also the military is supported by America's economy, which is symbolized by Wall Street, which is why this big prediction for Wall Street collapsing on this date. And this date will be 12 plus 12 days after this February 17th date, which is again connecting with the numbers 12 to back to Elon Musk and follow the White Rabbit. And we have the 12s in the Super Bowl connecting to all of this too. Furthermore, again, it was the 80s coach that died on the day of the 4 deaths. 8 plus 4 is 12. The 80s candidate in 84. 8 plus 4 is 12. The I-80, 8 deaths. 4 guides, 4th deadliest avalanche. 8 and 4 equals 12. 12 plus 12 days. Now we're moving right through this diagram here. Now we're getting to this big date here, this middle date between the two sets of 12 days. As you can see, it's all connecting here. Before we get there, we have to go here, because the 4 guides and the 4 deaths, okay, on this day in the 4th deadliest avalanche, 4 days after the 4-time champion quad god crashed, 444 plus 444 plus 444 days after the Colorado avalanche, as in the avalanche and the car pileup in Colorado, 4 deaths, 4 guides, repetition of number 3 times, 44th president, but also G, 444 in the Bible concordance is the word for man, which is why the 44th president is the Antichrist. Okay, that's why all of this confirms the exact 4 years connection to the 4th deadliest avalanche. From this climax of the trucker convoy freedom protest prophetic sign, when the Emergencies Act was tabled in the 44th Parliament. As I said, God pairs numbers together to confirm the signs and connections, and 2 of those numbers that he pairs together are 23 and 44. The 44th president was the basketball president who wore number 23 in high school. The 23rd prime minister led the tabling in the 44th Parliament. And by the way, Barack Obama hosted the 23rd Prime Minister, who, by the way, was elected exactly 7 years after Obama was elected. And Canadian elections aren't at the same time every year. But it was exactly 7 years, and it was on the date 11/4, which instead 11 times 4 equals 44. Well, there's something called the Richard Nixon prophecy, because Richard Nixon went to Canada for a state dinner, and at the dinner made a prophetic toast. He toasted Prime Minister Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau. He toasted at the state dinner hosted by Pierre Trudeau. His toast was to Pierre Trudeau's son, Justin Trudeau. And Nixon said, to the future Prime Minister of Canada. He said that exactly 44 years to the month to the state dinner with the 44th president. And at the time, Justin Trudeau was 4 months old. He was 4 months old, 44 years exactly. You get the idea. 44th Parliament was his big contribution to the Antichrist with the tabling of the Emergencies Act. Well, what was that all about? That was about restricting bank accounts, because that's what's coming. As Bible prophecy says, those who don't take the mark of the Antichrist will be restricted from buying and selling food. That will be rationed in an emergency, in a crisis, and it will be only provided to the so-called good citizens, the ones that take the mark of the Antichrist. And you know what I'm talking about, because it's exactly what the truckers were protesting. And as Bible prophecy says, those who take the mark of the Antichrist are going to hell. Now, I need to make something extremely clear. I'm going to do my best to make it as clear as possible. I know far more than you the reason and purpose that God has given me a voice through this prediction. I know the purpose of this prediction that is from God way more than you. Believe me, I know more than you why the purpose for this prediction. And it is not for you to go, oh, cool, you were able to know that the stock market was going to crash ahead of time. That's really neat. It's amazing that God showed you that. No, that is not the purpose of this prediction. And I know more than you the purpose of the prediction. And to not appreciate that is meaning that you are wasting your time. You should turn off the video now. The reason for this prediction is to prove every single one of them, all of the controversial things that I am saying in this video. There is no debate, for example, that Barack Obama is the second of the two antichrists. It is case closed when this prediction comes to pass. And I have the authority to say that. This is the purpose of prophecy. It is for proving the matter. And I am proving that this is God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, which overwhelmingly proves these controversial things that I am saying. And this big picture of signs, patterns, and connections will be proven to be true when the prediction comes to pass. And it proves what I'm saying. The mark of the Antichrist was what you thought it wasn't. It was the thing. In its current form, it did not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or false form of religious worship. In fact, for those who are wise, it did come with a false form of religious worship. It was wokeism, communist, leftist politics, whatever. It is a religion. And it does not need a supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is it is in fact judgment for this particular doctrine that Jesus calls Nicolaitan in the book of Revelation and says he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine, which is the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians today, which is dispensationalism, which is the package that free grace or cheap grace or once saved, always saved comes in. The workaround solution to prove once saved, always saved. And dismiss what, for example, Jesus said about the 7 churches needing to perform works. But no, that's for those that are after the mark of the Antichrist. That's not for us, because we're in the dispensation of grace, as they would say, which is so foolish. Because, for one thing, the letters to the churches were written to the churches in Asia Minor, which would be in their supposed church age. Now, the climax of the trucker protest was a date that was also recognized ahead of time. It was known that God was pointing to this date ahead of time, and then on this date, the Emergencies Act was tabled. Also, that was a surprise and not known ahead of time was that there were these Christians that were marching around the perimeter of the parliament. And I used to live in Ottawa, and you can do a literal perimeter around the parliament, which was symbolic of the marching of the Israelites around the walls of security of Jericho before they collapsed in God's judgment, not before they blew the trumpets. Well, after they did this, and they did it once per day for 7 days, well, these Christians did it once per day for 7 days, and the seventh day ended up being February 17th. They didn't know that that would be the day that the Emergencies Act would be tabled either. And then the lady leading this thing blew the shofar trumpet in front of Parliament for the media to see and photograph. It was a trumpeting of America's and Canada's border walls of security collapsing. In fact, that's the symbolism here too in the truckers, because the trucker convoy was a long line of trucks along the border wall of security, the 49th parallel, which is, by the way, why the convoy began on this date here, January 22nd, exactly 49 years after the Supreme Court legalized abortions. 7 justices, 7 times 7 years. That's the exact parallel with the Israelites, because it's actually a 7 and a 7 times 7. They marched around the walls once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. It was a 7 and a 7 times 7. 7 justices, 7 times 7 years. The border wall of security was the focus in God's signs with the trucker convoy, the 49th parallel, with the border wall of security with America, because God's signs are about America, not Canada. Of course, Canada is in the same boat. Speaking of this date, which is the date that symbolizes the ark and the boat. No pun intended. But that's also why the trucker convoy was all about the closure of the trade arteries, the border wall of security bridges. And by the way, a bridge is the same symbolism as a door in the Bible, and the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the symbol for a door, which is why the 4 years here. That's another subject. I could go into more detail. Because what's coming is the opening of the door to the demonic bottomless pit for the demons to emerge, and the collision between the demonic realm and the earthly realm, and the demonic possession of those who take the mark of the Antichrist. That's what's coming, which is symbolized by the number 4, which is why it connects with this thing about this big sign that was all about the VACCINE. I mean, this was the biggest prophetic sign about the VACCINE. This is huge. And that's why it's astounding that it's exactly 4 years to the 4 guides in the 4th deadliest avalanche, and the 4 deaths in Colorado on the interstate, and the closure of Donner Pass, which is about starvation, which is what the trucker convoy prophetic sign was about, but the closure of the bank accounts of the dissidents. By the way, the clogging of the roads in Ottawa and the trade arteries are symbolic of the clogged arteries that people got after taking the mark of the Antichrist. Now, not only does this day connect with the day that the abortions were legalized, the day that the trucker convoy began along the 49th parallel. By the way, what were they doing along the 49th parallel? They were blowing their horns, which is symbolic of the trumpets that were blown along the wall, outside the walls of security of Jericho. And they were blowing their horns outside of Parliament and the perimeter of Parliament, where the Christians marched around in 3 sets of 7. And ultimately, there was an act by a judge in Ottawa that shut down the horns in Ottawa by the truckers, an injunction or whatever, and that was initiated by, and it was a news story because she was so young, a 21-year-old. 7 plus 7 plus 7. Okay, now the 44th Parliament tabling of the Emergencies Act was exactly 4 plus 4 plus 4 months after this other biggest sign for the VACCINE, which was the death of player number 44. Hank Aaron, the home run king, as in the Antichrist king, who took the VACCINE publicly in the fourth state 6 plus 6 plus 6 days earlier. And he did it to promote the VACCINE at the headquarters of the three-letter agency, begins with a C and ends with a DC. In Atlanta, the fourth state, player number 44, because the 44th president is the Antichrist king. He's the home run king. And by the way, in 3 of his years, he hit 44 home runs, and he tied Babe Ruth's record on the date 4-4. And this day was known ahead of time because I knew ahead of time that it was exactly 444 weeks after this date. And that's why it was astounding and jaw-dropping when player number 44 died on this date. By the way, this was also the day that RFK Jr. was cancel cultured, which is symbolic of everything like the truckers that were cancel cultured with the bank accounts. RFK Jr., God's voice for truth regarding the VACCINE, which is, by the way, incidentally, why he symbolically has an issue with his voice, because God is communicating that he is God's voice for truth regarding the VACCINE. He was cancel cultured by the media platforms like Twitter, the censorship, on this date. That the home run king died, number 44, exactly 444 weeks, which was why this was known ahead of time, after this date, which was about the shooting in Colorado. And mass shootings are symbolic of the thing. The masses taking the thing, the SHOTs. The SHOTs, the things that come out of guns and go into people, are symbolic of the SHOTs that come out of things and go into people in God's signs. This was the Batman movie named The Black Knight Rises, Dark Knight Rises, massacre. The movie Massacre in Colorado, which connects to the Columbine shooting in Colorado and on and on. I'll just end the trail here, though. But it was exactly 42 months after the inauguration of the 44th president, and in Bible prophecy, the period of the Antichrist is symbolized by 42 months. That's why 42 months from the 44th president to the shooting in Colorado, 444 weeks to the death of number 44, right? 6 plus 6 plus 6 days after he took it in the fourth state, and 4 plus 4 plus 4 months to the beginning of the trucker convoy about the mark of the Antichrist, protesting it. And that in turn is the Emergencies Act in the 44th Parliament, and then 4 years exactly to the fourth deadliest avalanche, 4 guides. Okay, and 4 deaths in Colorado in the car pileup on the interstate. The interstate I-80 shut down at Donner Pass because of starvation, which is what is hinted at with the trucker convoy, with the bank accounts being shut down in the Emergencies Act. And again, this was 444 plus 444 plus 444 days after the Stanley Cup win of the Colorado Avalanche, as in the Colorado pileup and the Avalanche, the 4th deadliest. But here's the thing. A lot of players on these teams are Canadian. And this connects to the Canadian convoy, the trucker convoy. February 17th again, right here, with 129 days. God uses this number 129 because of the concordance number in the Greek concordance, 129, which is the word that means blood, which means blood. A person's blood is poisoned when they take the mark of the Antichrist, which is why the truckers were protesting it and trying to wake up the hypnotized Covidians, a play on the Branch Davidians, which is serious. I mean, the Branch Davidian cult is actually a prophetic sign pointing to the Covidians. And it is a political cult that's leading to politicide, a type of genocide of those who don't take the mark of the Antichrist, who will be put into internment camps and things like this. And that's why, for example, Justin Trudeau at the time said, we have to make a decision whether we're going to put up with these people or tolerate these people. He actually said that. Oh, but no. The left is good, and the conservatives are evil. Yeah, that's right. Okay. By the way, this 9 days here from the 0 to 9 White Rabbit halftime show, that's confirmation of the 5 and 9 days here. Again, the 5 days is because he was ahead by 5 points. He was the 4-time winner, and the quad god 4 days. I already explained that though. So we've now brought in the truckers again. Now we can go to this date here. Again, I've explained many times now the significance of this 12 days. The 8s and the 4s and the signs here. 8 plus 4 is 12, right? We have also these 12s connecting and then giving us this 12 plus 12 days. We have the 12s winning the Super Bowl, the fans, right? The Beastquake fans. Well, what happened on this date, March 1st? This is amazing. And I have to believe this is a big reason why God made it that I was actually born in Canada, but I am an American at heart and spent my adult life in America. So I know these things. I know, for example, how Canadians are proud of their hockey players and their comedians. There's a whole slew of Canadian comedians, and now God has confirmed that this is really a pattern, because it's a big prophetic sign here. The Canadian comedians are a big thing. It's, I guess, similar to how there's the so-called British invasion when the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and more so-called invaded the U.S. rock scene in the 60s. Well, we have a pattern of Canadian comedians here, and God has brought them together on this one date here in the science. And it's profound. But why did he do that? To point back to the Canadian truckers. It's not fun and games here. By the way, Donner Pass and where the avalanche was is Truckee, California. Literally. Not outside it, within the perimeter of the district or the city of Truckee. Truckee, California. As in 4 years exactly to the trucker convoy. Truckee, California, trucker convoy. That's the name of the city. Truckee. It's on the map. I've driven through this a few times. That confirms everything. The 4th deadliest avalanche in Truckee, California hints at 4 years to the 44th Parliament and the trucker convoy. Okay, the Canadian comedian sign here on March 1st is all about the truckers, the Canadian truckers, the heroes. The heroes of the COVID cult. The heroes, the heroes fighting the COVID cult, the political cult of the left, which the truth, by the way, was that COVID and the MASKs were used as a political weapon. Whether they know it consciously or not, it was a political weapon used against their arch enemies, true conservatives and true Christians. It wasn't an accident that those that broke into the in favor or not in favor of the thing lined up with the conservative side of the spectrum. And the true believers were on the left side. The true believers, the anti-Trumpers. for example. Now, so what happened here on March 1st? Well, first of all, this was the day of the award ceremony for the SAG, the Actors Awards. Forget what the S stands for, but it's the Actors Awards ceremony. And Canadian comedian Catherine O'Hara won the Best Actress Award on the state 3-1. And Canadian comedian Seth Rogen accepted the award on her behalf because she had recently died on the date 1:30, which hints at the date 3-1. It's a mirror. Okay? So she died on the date 1:30 and she won the award on the date 3-1. This hints at the 13th of the month, as we are learning here. And so we have the Canadian comedian winning the award, and the award was accepted and the speech was given by the other Canadian comedian, Seth Rogen. Now, on this same day, all right, I apologize. I should have zoomed in the diagram earlier in case you weren't able to read as I was going. Here was the February 17th signs. I'm sure you may got that. The Quad God, Black Swan crash, Colorado avalanche, 444 plus 444 plus 440 days before, 4 deaths in the Colorado, car pileup, and the 4th deadliest avalanche. Okay, 4 years, 4 plus 4 plus 4 months. Okay, hopefully things are straightforward. Elon Musk, follow the white rabbit. 12s. On the date 12/12, 12 plus 12 months. To the date 12/12, Trump at the stock exchange on the year 12 plus 12. And then 12 times 12 plus 12 times 12 plus 12 times 12 days to the white rabbit eclipse, which isn't listed here. Yeah, white rabbit eclipse, there it is, okay? In the day of the Truckee, California sign. Okay? And then 12 plus 12 days to the stock market prediction. Okay. Now we're talking about the Canadian truckers, which is hinted at with Truckee, California, the trucker convoy, Truckee, California. And by the way, through Donner Pass, drive truckers on the I-80. Big time. A lot of trucks go through the Donner Pass on the I-80 through Truckee, California. It's like a trucker convoy. That's amazing, right? Because it's not just Truckee, it's the closure of the I-80 at Donner Pass, which is where the truckers drive through. Trucker convoy. There's a convoy along the border wall of security across the continent. Okay, so that's what's being pointed to with the Canadians here, the Canadian comedians, as I'm establishing. Again, the March 1st was the award for Best Actress for Catherine O'Hara, who got her start in comedy in Toronto with the TV show SCTV, as did many other famous comedians, including Martin Short. And he is written down here? Maybe not. Again, all of these, this will be explained more in detail in another video. This is just the surface level of these connections. So Martin Short was also in the news this day because he didn't attend the Actors Awards, which he would have because he was nominated, but he didn't attend. And that's because his daughter had just died. And there's more to the significance of his daughter's death, which is another story. Well, it's not really another story, but we need to keep focused here. So Martin Short, a former member with Catherine O'Hara of SCTV, was also nominated and was also in the news for being absent, just like Catherine O'Hara was absent because she had died. Martin Short was absent because his daughter had died. This gets us to this theme of deaths, which is why on this same day, there was this prophetic shooting in Austin, Texas. Austin is the capital of Texas. It is the seat of power, which hints at Austin Powers, the movie franchise, created by Mike Myers, famous Canadian comedian who also is associated with SCTV in the start of his career. Now, we got the deaths because Catherine O'Hara was absent because she died, and Martin Short was absent because his daughter died. This brings us to the death of Jorge George Peterson at the age of 30. Catherine O'Hara died 30 days before Seth Rogen, the Canadian comedian, accepted the award for Catherine O'Hara, the Canadian comedian. 30 days. George Peterson died in the shooting in Austin, the seat of power, as in Austin Powers. Now, this is amazing because also at this time, George Peterson is hinting at the famous Canadian, extremely famous Canadian, Jordan Peterson. That's what's hinted at with George Peterson at the age of 30 being killed in this shooting, which ties into the Canadian comedians. Again, Catherine O'Hara died on the 30th of the month, 30 days before the death of George Peterson at the age of 30, which hints at Jordan Peterson, the famous Canadian who was what? Cancel cultured. And who was a voice, especially during this time. During the time of the trucker convoy. What's also confirmation is that at this time on March 1st, Jordan Peterson had recently become ill and was absent from his tour dates. He's on tour. He was supposed to be on tour right now. And he's not there. He's absent because he's been ill, which is news. The Canadian was absent on the day that Catherine O'Hara and Martin Short were absent. On the day that George Peterson was killed in Austin, the seat of power, as in Austin Powers' Mike Myers. Not only that, but Jordan Peterson is known for his tour and touring for his famous book, 12 Rules for Life. That's right. This sign, this death that points to Jordan Peterson, that is 12 days after the Truckee, California sign, which hints at the trucker convoy sign, which Jordan Peterson was a part of, is 12 days, and then another 12 days to the predicted crash on Wall Street. Because Jordan Peterson is known for his 12 rules for life. And furthermore, touring to speak to large audiences about it. And that's exactly what is the case at this time of the other absences from the other Canadians. Now, this was the day also that Khomeini was killed. And in terms of Austin Powers, Khomeini is clearly symbolism for Dr. Evil. If you don't know Austin Powers, it's a spoof on the James Bond movies, right? It's a parody on the James Bond movies. And Mike Myers, one of the characters Mike Myers plays is Dr. Evil. Okay? And that's clearly Khomeini. He is a James Bond-like Dr. Evil with intent to take over the world. He's like, if any leader in the world is a Dr. Evil, it's Khomeini. And he died on this day that points of this Austin Powers sign. Yeah, that's right. There's more confirmation though, because we have Catherine O'Hara here. But there was a famous Black Swan movie. Oh, and Martin Short's daughter died at the age of 42, by suicide, which also ties into the recent death of Tommy Lee Jones's daughter by suicide at the age of 42 in San Francisco, which is hinting at Pope Francis, the first of the two antichrists. Well, anyway, speaking of Black Swan, because like I said, we have Black Swan. This date was known ahead of time. This date was known ahead of time as being Black Swan events, and sure enough, we had the Black Swan signs. A sudden unexpected avalanche is a black swan, and then we had the Curse of the Black Pearl about the rescue of the Elizabeth Swann character. Well, the Black Swan here, it's all pointing to the movie Black Swan through all of what I'm describing, because Catherine O'Hara and her award on the state and her absence points to the movie Black Swan starring Maureen O'Hara and Tyrone Power, as in Austin Powers. That's right. These are the two actors, the two stars of this 1942 movie. Oh, that's by the way why Martin Short's daughter died at 42, because of the Black Swan movie released in 1942, starring O'Hara, as in Catherine O'Hara, and Power, as in Austin Powers. Okay, now also, at the Actor Awards, the ceremony focused on Michael J. Fox, who was in attendance, and gave a small monologue to the camera during the show. Michael J. Fox is someone that God uses. Of course, he is a famous Canadian comedian. So we didn't only have Seth Rogen, Catherine O'Hara, Martin Short, and then through them also through the shooting, Mike Myers. We also have Michael J. Fox on this day. God is using Michael J. Fox for one thing, because Fox is equal to 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. Because F is the 6th letter, O is the 15th letter, 1 plus 5 is 6, and X is the 24th letter, 2 plus 4 is 6. MJ gives us the 13th and 10th letter, which adds up to 23. The Antichrist wore number 23 in high school basketball, the basketball president. Just as Michael Jordan did. Speaking of Jordan Peterson. But the point, by the way, all of this, if I wasn't clear, is to confirm all of this points to the trucker convoy, which Jordan Peterson was a part of, in a sense. I mean, he was the voice on the screen, in the podcasts and on YouTube, the Canadian, talking about it during the time of the protest. He was, in a way, sort of the face of the protest. Jordan Peterson, confirming the connection to the Truckee, California, to the trucker convoy. Jordan Peterson, 12 rules for life, 12 days. Astounding. By the way, the mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by the number 22, and 4 years is 2 plus 2. And the trucker convoy was in the year 22, and it began on the 22nd day of the year. The 22nd day of the 22nd year was the beginning of the convoy in protest of the mark of the Antichrist. And the mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by the number 22. By the way, I just realized all of this. I never really realized this until just now. And 22 plus 22 is 44. Wow. 44th Parliament, 4 plus 4 plus 4 months to the death of player number 44. Okay, the number 22 symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist described in the book of Ezekiel would have been a Tav mark. The Tav is the last and 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last and 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Also, the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, and chromosomes come in pairs, and each chromosome has 2 arms. And so 2 and 2, 22. 2 plus 2 years from the 22nd day of the year 22. Wow. Wow. To 2 plus 2 guides and the 2 plus second death, whatever you want to, however you want to look at it. Okay. But it's just amazing. 12 rules for life, 12 days from the death of this guy, George Peterson. Now, the interesting thing here too is that the chief of police and the president of University of Texas, right near where the shooting was in Austin, both of their surnames is Davis. And that's because the true surname of the Antichrist is Davis. Barack Obama Sr. is not Obama's biological father. Frank Marshall Davis is. Let me just explain that briefly, if I can. Barack Obama's mother and grandparents on the mother's side were constantly moving around the country, moved a number of times, and the mainstream lying left media will tell you it's because his grandfather was a traveling furniture salesman working for different furniture store companies. No, furniture store salesmen don't travel the country and keep changing furniture stores. The truth is he was a CIA agent, and that was his cover. And at one point he was assigned to Hawaii to cover the communist movement in Hawaii. And the leader of the communist movement in Hawaii, who was from Chicago originally, Frank Marshall Davis, seduced Obama's mother at the age of 18. The reason why he crossed the paths of Obama's mother is because of his grandfather being assigned to cover the communist movement. And so in fear of Obama's grandfather losing his job, they devised a scheme to have it so that Frank Marshall Davis was not the father. And they brought in through a CIA program, Obama Sr. The CIA in its attempt to fight communism in Kenya brought in some of the elite's children to study so that they could, become Americanized, etc. So that's why Obama Sr. was in the country in Hawaii studying. And so he was approached to play the role of the fake father so that it could not be obvious that Frank Marshall Davis knocked up the Obama's mother at the age of 18. The irony of ironies, and it is designed by God, this irony of ironies, of all ironies, is that the Antichrist would have never been born had abortions been legalized. The leader of the abortion party would not even exist had abortions been legal. That's right. And guess what? The first state to legalize abortions was Hawaii, another coincidence designed by God to prove the matter. And Obama is predicted to be the 50th president, the 50th state, Hawaii. It's all because he never would have existed had abortions been legal. Because the 18-year-old would have definitely had an abortion. She did not want the child. She wanted to be with her friends back in Seattle where she had grown up. And she agreed to go along with the plan on condition that her father let her move back to Seattle. And Obama Sr. and Obama's mother never spent any time together, and this is why. They weren't really married. And Obama Sr. did it in agreement. He agreed to it, and what he got out of it was permission to stay and finish his doctorate or pursue a doctorate, which he wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. And so that's why that's why this all happened. Now, the smart thing they did, though, in order to fool immigration, for Obama Sr. is they had the birth in Kenya. And so the people that say Obama was the evidence for how, including me, Obama was born in Kenya, okay? And that's a fact. Not only is the evidence overwhelming if you actually look at it and stop watching the brainwashing of the left media, but when this prediction comes to pass, like I said, it'll prove all of the controversial things that I am saying. Case closed. There's zero debate. None. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which will be proven to be true when the prediction comes to pass, overwhelmingly proves that Obama was born in Kenya. There's no debate at all. Okay? But the thing is that only I could figure this out. Because there's the camp that says, besides the brainwashed camp on the left, there's the camp that says Obama was born in Kenya and Obama's real father is Frank Marshall Davis. And they think that they're at odds with each other, but in fact, they're both right. And it took me to figure it out because I had the same situation. As a Canadian, I almost got the fake marriage done while I was living in Hawaii. And that's why it all clicked for me. I know what happened because they're both right. All of the evidence is 100% correct. Frank Marshall Davis is the father, and Obama had a relationship with this communist in his adolescence, which is why Obama became a communist. And is a communist, because once a communist, always a communist, unless they have a life-changing experience with Christ, which Obama hasn't had, of course. And also that's why the evidence for him being born in Kenya is also correct, because he was. And he knew it all along, of course. And the autobiography was a ruse written by Bill Ayers, the founder of the Weather Underground, the terrorist communist movement. Obama got his start in politics in the living room of Bill Ayers, and Bill Ayers has said that he wrote Obama's autobiography. You can find that on YouTube. It's not a conspiracy theory. He actually did write it because their plan all along is that they knew that real African American would never be elected, and so a president, and so they knew that he had to be an immigrant, and they were right. He was the well-spoken immigrant, which allowed the white apparatchik in the Democrat Party to accept this, because the population was never going to vote for at least they thought at that time, a Democrat African American. It's more likely that a black Republican would become president than a black Democrat. Anyway, besides Obama, who passed himself off as an immigrant, which is why he went to Kenya for the book and all of that, to play on that. Okay, enough of that story. Went off tangent. I had to do it because I guess Davis came up in God's signs and might as well explain it. Although it'll be explained in the other detailed video. Oh well. Okay, so regarding, we have a second witness confirmation to the relevance of these signs here pointing to the movie Black Swan, released in 42, Martin Short's daughter, death at 42, and Austin Power and Catherine O'Hara, the stars of the movie Black Swan, released in 42, Power and O'Hara. Well, we have the death of Maureen O'Hara, okay, right here on October 24th. It was exactly the 29th semi-prime number of years after Black Thursday. And again, this is predicted to connect to the Black Swan event in the stock market. Black Thursday is the initial Black Swan crash in 1929, and that's why the 29th semi-prime number. But also, 29 is the 9 plus 10 plus 10th prime number. No, sorry. 29 is 9 plus 10 plus 10. That's all I meant to say. Now, this 29th semi-prime number of years, which is 86 years, is the equivalent of 1,032 months. And GE 1032 is to burst forth. Gush forth, as in the flood, the sudden, unexpected flood. Black swan event. Also 86, because G86 in the Greek concordance is the word Hades, which is the word for hell, and H46 is bow the knee, as in bow the knee to Satan, the Antichrist. Now, the death of Maureen O'Hara is exactly 11 times 11 months to the death of the 111-year-old, the oldest survivor of the Black Wall Street Massacre, a nickname for the Tulsa Massacre in the early 20th century. He died on this November 24th date, 2025. Now, this is 11 times 11 hints at 11, and we have another connection of 109. But also the 109 days here also pairs with the 111 years, 9 and 11. The walls of security collapsed in God's judgment symbolically on 9/11. We're talking about a predicted collapse on Wall Street, which the 109 days connects to. Also, 109 is the 29th prime number, and 29 is 9 plus 10 plus 10, which hints at 9/11. So another way to confirm the significance of this 109 days. From the death of the survivor of Black Wall Street Massacre. The reason why it's nicknamed by that by the way, is because it was the prosperous area for African Americans, Black Americans in Tulsa. Connects with Black Thursday and the predicted Black Swan event this March 13th. Amazing. The survivor of the Black Wall Street death connects to this. And the death to the star of Black Swan. One last thing up here is that the predicted Black Swan event on March 13th will be exactly 999 months and 9 days. And the most important number from the Bible is, the number 9 is from the Bible. It symbolizes God's judgment to the release of the movie Black Swan. This movie that was released in 1942. Oh, and by the way, the movie is about pirates. The Black Swan movie is about pirates, and this connects with the Pirates of the Caribbean sign. So this sign right here that points to the pirate movie Black Swan is 4 days after the 4 deaths on the boat in the Caribbean. That was the Pirates of the Caribbean sign. Curse of the Black Pearl, rescue of the Lady Swan. So pirates to pirates, because all of this points to the pirate Black Swan movie. Amazing, right? Now, the release of the Black Swan movie was exactly 18 years and 8 months before the birth of the Antichrist Obama on the date 8/4, which is why the first presidential candidate was a Black Swan event in American politics in the year 84. Because Obama's presidency as the Antichrist is a Black Swan event, and furthermore, he will return to the White House after the Black Swan predicted plane crash of Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom. Not only is Obama born on the date 8/4, and that's the reason for all these 8/4s, including up here, for example, the 8 days followed by the 4 days, which I explained, right? Because of the I-80 and the 4 guides and the 4th deadliest and the 4 deaths in Colorado on the day the 80s coach died and on, 8 and 4. Obama born, the Antichrist, on the date 8/4, but the name Obama is equal to 84 in Hebrew gematria. The reason for 18 years and 8 months is because, as I mentioned earlier, the number that God uses, 188, points to H188 in the Hebrew concordance, which is the word in the Bible that used in the context of extreme judgment from God, which is the word woe exclamation mark. Again, 9/11 was the only other time for an enemy attacked the nation's capital besides 188 years exactly earlier, as I mentioned earlier. Another thing, too, is that God pairs 9, 23, and 44 to confirm the signs and connections. And 3 divided by 13, the date, gives us 0.230. And that pairs with the 999 months and 9 days. That confirms the matter. Yeah. So I think we've explained this entire diagram now, and it is amazing beyond words, right? And when the prediction comes to pass, it'll prove all of the information in this video is from God and is true. And that is the purpose of the prediction. Make no mistake, I have the authority to say this. All of the information in this video will be proven to be true when this prediction comes to pass. God bless. All right, a few more things to confirm the prophetic significance of Maureen O'Hara, and therefore that this Catherine O'Hara sign indeed points to Maureen O'Hara, who starred in the movie Black Swan, is that she retired and then came out of retirement after 20 years. She retired from acting, and 20 years later, she starred in a movie, and only one movie did she come out of retirement for, starring John Candy. It was a John Candy movie. I believe it was written by John Candy, etc. John Candy, of course, being another famous Canadian comedian from the original SCTV series starring Catherine O'Hara and Martin Short. So Maureen O'Hara literally ties to these Canadian comedians, not just through the name only, not just through the timing of the Black Swan signs. Maureen O'Hara ties to John Candy. Not only that, but 20 years, she was in retirement for 20 years. 20 years in the Bible is prophetic. It symbolizes a perfect period of time. Okay, now Maureen O'Hara first moved to Hollywood to star in the movie The Hunchback of Notre Dame. She has a long list of movies she was in. Her nickname is the Queen of Technicolor. She was one of the most successful actresses in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So she's the Queen of Technicolor is her nickname. This hints at Queen Michelle Obama, who is predicted to become the Queen of America, the president, on January 20th, 2029. After the Black Swan event of the plane crash that I mentioned earlier. Gavin Newsom and Harris will be replaced by Michelle and Barack Obama. Okay, so Maureen O'Hara, the Queen of Technicolor, was born on August 17th, 1920, exactly 108 years and 10 months before June 17th, 2029, when it is predicted that Queen Michelle will step down and Barack Obama will become the 50th president. 108 years and 10 months hints at the number 181, and we already covered that in this video. Again, the Super Bowl was exactly 181 months after the date 18 in the year 11 and the day of the Beastquake, which was a football game, and so was the Super Bowl. Again, 181 is the equivalent of the name Barack Obama in Hebrew gematria. Okay, so Maureen O'Hara was born with this number of connection to the Queen of Technicolor. Her birth connects to the stepping down of the Queen of America. Also, what confirms this is that the Queen of Technicolor, Maureen O'Hara, who starred in the first movie that she moved for in Hollywood, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, she died 42 months before Michelle Obama was on the Seine River on a riverboat cruise during the time of the fire at the Notre Dame Cathedral to promote her book, The Becoming. It was a chartered boat. The boat had to be redirected because of the fire. There's the famous image of Michelle Obama sipping from a wine glass, and in the reflection is the burning of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Notre Dame, Our Lady, Michelle Obama, the Queen. So that's why Michelle Obama, because she will become the Queen. That's why she was promoting the book that day. So anyway, that day is 42 months, but it's also 181 weeks, which confirms the 108 years and 10 months connection. Oh, and 42 months is the period of time in the Bible for the Antichrist. It symbolizes the period of time of the Antichrist. Okay, I forgot maybe perhaps the most obvious thing here. I said at the beginning that this was the center of the diagram, the February 17th, Truckee, California, avalanche, car pileup signs, right? Okay, and again, I confirmed for you the addition of the 8 days because it was the I-80 that was closed at Donner Pass near the avalanche, near the 8 deaths, on the same day as the 80s coach for the Colorado team, on the same day as the car pileup in Colorado, and the same day as the death of the 80s candidate, the Black Swan event in American politics, right? Also, again, the Quad God skater, he finished in 8th place. I confirmed for you I confirmed the addition of the 8 days and also the 4 days, because again, the politician in 84, etc. 4 deaths, 80s coach, 4th deadliest avalanche, 8 deaths. Okay. But what I didn't mention is that March 13th, the date of the predicted Black Swan stock market crash, is not only 12 plus 12 days, but it's 24 days, which is 8 plus 8 plus 8 days. And so in other words, from the death of the 80s coach and the death of the 80s candidate, we know, by the way, the 80s candidate, before I forget, he was next to Martin Luther King when he was shot in the 4 times 4th state. That's another 84. And he was the candidate in 84. And both of these men died in their 80s. The 80s coach and the 80s candidate died in their 80s. Forgot to mention that too. Anyway, the 80s candidate was next to Martin Luther King, as in the Antichrist King, who died on the date 4-4 in the 4 times 4th state in the year 68, and 68 is equal to Barack Obama in simple English gematria, the Antichrist King, the 44th president, okay, who was born on the date 8-4, and whose name Obama is equal to 84 in Hebrew gematria. All right, anyway, what I wanted to get at, I'm just clearing up a whole bunch of things that I forgot. It seems like here, I didn't anticipate this, but what I wanted to say is that the death of the 80s coach and the 80s candidate on the day of the closure of the I-80 at Donner Pass, prophetic Donner Pass, and at the time of the 8 deaths, which was after the 8th place finish of the Black Swan skater, okay? All of this is 8 plus 8 plus 8 days, and God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, to this predicted crash on Wall Street. Also, the name Jesus in Greek in the New Testament is equal to 888 in Greek gematria. But anyway, 8 plus 8 plus 8 from the, and you know what? One thing I forgot to mention too is that this date is the sudden, unexpected Black Swan flood date. The flood in the Bible was a Black Swan event. And in the flood, which began on the date 217 in the Bible, 8 people were rescued in the ark. In other words, 8 is a significant number regarding the flood and the beginning of the flood. 8 people were in the ark, which is why all of these 8s. I can't believe I forgot all of this most important information until the end here. All of these 8s on this 217 date. which further confirms because God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of symbolic meaning, 8 plus 8 plus 8 days to this predicted black swan stock market crash, as in the crash of the waters and the flood, sudden, unexpected, 8 people rescued. And all of this is leading to the second coming of Jesus, whose name is equal to 888, who will be doing the rescuing in the rapture. And also from all sinners who would otherwise be going to hell. And another thing, this 4 deaths in the Caribbean boat off the island, like the pirates, which gives us this 4 days, for example. These 4 deaths, this Pirates of the Caribbean sign, and there were 4 sequels to the Curse of the Black Pearl about the rescue of Swan. The 4 deaths which make this Pirates of the Caribbean sign. By the way, the following day was the prophetic sign of Hillary Clinton's testimony, which was a prophetic sign that hinted at her testimony regarding Benghazi, in which 4 Americans died in the CIA compound. All right. Well, anyway, these 4 deaths is 4 times 4 days to the predicted crash on Wall Street. And 4 times 4 days gives us 44, hints at it. And the date itself, again, hints at the number 23. And again, God pairs 23 and 44 to confirm the signs and connections, as the 44th president was the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. And so this confirms that Obama is the Antichrist pirate who will preside over the demons symbolized by pirates coming out of the bottomless pit. Anyway, 4 times, which is opened by a door, which is the symbol for a door, is the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Okay, so it's 4 times 4 days from the 4 deaths in the Pirates of the Caribbean sign, which gives us 44, and this compares with the date that hints at 23. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or 2 that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.